Thank you everyone for coming back so promptly after lunch. We are basically in the second half of the day. For those who don't know me, my name's Cloda. I am Associate Director of CTaLE and I have some ridiculous title called Associate Dean of Education Quality at Imperial Business School, which means I'm spending most of my life talking and thinking about AI. But I've also done a lot of work on employability in economics degrees, and this is a new phase of that work as far as I'm concerned. So delighted to be chairing this panel, which is around what skills economics graduates need in an AI-enabled world. I guess subplot, are they different? Are they the same? Are they the same plus others? And I'm delighted to be joined by a panel, and I'm going to allow them all to introduce themselves in a second. Ylva is joining us online, and the other four are in the room. So Tom, can I ask you just a quick 10 seconds introduction of yourself?
My name's Tom Aldred. I'm based at the UK Treasury. My team looks after the Government Economics Service, so our main role is in recruiting a couple of hundred economists each year and placing them with government departments. And we also have a role in professional development. Personally, I've been an economist in government for over 20 years.
Thanks, Tom. Ylva, do you want to introduce yourself online, please?
My name is Ylva. I'm at King's Business School, and I'm in the Banking and Finance department. I also head up sustainable finance at our Centre for Sustainable Business. My main research is in gender equality in financial services, but obviously also sustainability. And I have a past in banking and also as a CEO of a fintech startup.
Hi, my name is Edwin, Edwin Ip, and I'm from the University of Exeter. I'm a behaviour economist and I do a lot of research on AI and recruitment in the labour market, and as well as things like discrimination and so forth. Yeah.
Thank you. And Cezary.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Cezary. I am a quantitative researcher at Finalto Trading. My day-to-day role is around designing, evaluating and refining algorithmic strategies in the financial markets. So I am hoping to share some of that financial perspective on the AI with you today.
Thank you. And finally, I'd like to introduce Ramin Nassehi, who is going to stand here and present his survey findings to us. And Ramin, you can introduce yourself as well as doing your survey findings.
Sure. I'm Ramin Nassehi, Associate Professor of Economics at UCL, and quite passionate about improving the way economists communicate better to become better economic storytellers. Now, to this survey. How are professional economists actually using AI at work? Let's delve into results, 5 minutes. We were lucky that 114 people responded to our survey, all of them with economics or finance degrees who are now working in industry. And we followed the elaborate methodology of bombardment, correct? Yes. Let me tell you a little bit about the characteristics of these respondents. Majority of them were based in the UK. In terms of sectors, they were mainly coming from academia, public sector, and consultancy. The majority of them, in terms of work experience, had less than 3 years of work experience, and most of them were male. We asked them, how do you use AI in your work? Right? And in order to find that out, we gave them these set of tasks and categories, right? Select all that applies. Have a look at this wide variety of tasks for a second. They range from very analytically narrow, well-defined tasks like coding. You ask your AI tool for a specific command, how to run appropriate regression in Stata or Python. This is very well specified task. All the way to analytically broad and open-ended task. You brainstorm with your AI tools how to run a workshop, how to analyze my survey, how to run a survey. So you can see as you move from left to right, tasks become more complicated, they become more open-ended, and the level of thinking becomes from low to mid-level to high level, right? So think about it in this way. As you move from left to right, as you need to interact with the AI tool more and more for doing those tasks. You need to enter into a conversation with the AI tool. So we gave these categories to the economists, and this is what they responded. A wide variety, right? Economists use it for a wide variety of tasks, from all the way very analytically narrow, well-defined tasks to very broad, right? Coding, debugging, drafting written content. This could be, abstract. This could be doing a literature review, all the way to brainstorming. So a wide variety of activities. You might say, okay, so what? We all use AI for a wide variety of activities. I want to know the most important use of AI for economists, right? So this is exactly what we asked. What is the most important use of AI for you at work? But this time, we didn't give them any categories. We didn't want to impose any categories on the respondents. This was an open-ended question. We want them to tell us, right? So we got a lot of qualitative data, a lot of text. So we had to extract themes from it. And this was the theme. Ta-da! Most important use of AI, again, a wide variety. A lot of people, yes, a lot of people said coding, 30%, but a lot of people as well said drafting written documents, writing abstracts, doing a literature review, write a LinkedIn post, all the way people using it for brainstorming. So in a sense, the main message is that AI tool for economists is not just about coding, it's much wider. The comparative advantage or the absolute advantage of AI for economists is much broader, right? So let me go to, I would say, the most important question of the survey, right? That kind of relates to what we do as teachers. What AI-related skills or experiences would you hope new economics graduates would have entering the workforce? Essentially, essential employability skills for future, right? This, again, open-ended, and we got this. Again, a wide variety, right? Coding and programming, very specific, right, skills. Prompting the AI, critical thinking and evaluation. This is always there in the employer surveys. This is really interesting. Know the limits of AI, right? And then, of course, research skills and problem solving. I'll finish in 1 minute. Just some examples. Let me give you some examples of quotes that speak to these themes. Let's focus on this quote. Know how to use AI as an assistant tool without excessively relying on that. Still be able to double check and have a critical attitude on the outcome proposed. So this quote speaks to, right, these two themes: critical thinking and evaluation, knowing the limits of AI, know when to rely on AI and when not to rely on AI, right? Now, let me finish with this. Obviously, before the finishing slide, you can access the more extensive version of it with the QR code, more extensive of it. But now to the main finding. If I would like you to remember one thing, is this. Economists are using AI at these 3 different levels, at a wide variety, at these 3 different levels. Economists are using AI as a tool, as a calculator. When you're giving a code to let's say, your AI tool, and ask that AI tool to debug it. This is very specific, using it as a calculator. Economists are also using AI as a research assistant, as an executive assistant, as a comms manager. When you're asking AI to do a literature review for you, to write an abstract for you, to write a LinkedIn post. Here, there will be more back and forth between you and the AI, more of a conversation that is happening, right? Because you need to specify the task, a lot of back and forth. And finally, economists are using AI as a co-problem solver, as a co-researcher, someone you have an intellectual dialogue with, right? And interestingly, the economists, in terms of employability skills, when they wanted to suggest skills, they suggested these skills: coding and programming, critical thinking and evaluation, research skills. Now, these three set of skills help the future economists to use AI and interact AI at these three different levels in a more effective way. Thank you so much.
So, thank you very much for that, Ramin. That's pretty insightful. I'm not sure those skills are any different, but if it's those skills plus using AI to help with those skills, that's slightly different. I have some questions for the panel to give you some time in the room to ponder. If you have any questions, hopefully you can now see Ylva online as well as us. So I will be directing questions to different people. And I'm going to start with a question which carries on nicely from Ramin's survey. So I'm going to ask people to think about how are economists using AI in their organizations. So what we're looking for here are a bit more concrete examples of the types of things that Ramin has uncovered. And Cezary, I might start with you in the finance trading side, how you see people are using AI.
Absolutely. So first and foremost, very often there is a lot of ambiguity about the terms that we use when we are talking about the new technology. There is ambiguity about the word AI, and there is ambiguity around the word of use. Starting with the AI, what it used to be, say, for example, a couple of years ago, it was an umbrella term that covered terms like machine learning, statistical learning, all the sort of statistical tools that helped us with forecasting and building predictive models. Today, with the advancements of OpenAI and other tech startups, we are thinking of AI as these large language models that we can talk to and can generate some useful output for us. Regarding the word use, again, we are dealing with effectively a distinction between people who are utilizing these tools, that are working with them, and it makes them more productive. And on the flip side, by the use of AI, we may mean building actual products and actual pipeline and actual business logic that is effectively being used by AI. In the context of what I do at Finalto Trading, which is an algorithmic trading firm, we are obviously using the large language models quite extensively in our day-to-day work in terms of debugging code, trying to make sure that we write an efficient software, and this type of stuff. Regarding building actual products, which means effectively delivering the prices to clients at a very high frequencies. This is not something we can do because we are tied by all sorts of regulatory framework in which all the prices that we deliver to our clients have to be explainable in some way. Unfortunately, feeding all the available data into a large language model is not something that we can deem explainable. So we definitely don't see that. But overall, I definitely think that's the usage of AI as a tool that makes us more efficient, helps us build better software, and make it faster and more reliable is definitely something that is prevalent in the financial sector today.
Brilliant, thank you. Ylva, do you want to add anything about the finance sector and how you've seen people using AI?
Yeah, I'm no longer in the finance sector, so I can what I can say is that way ahead of where we were when I was working in finance, that's for sure. So I can respond more from an academic angle, and here I have to admit that I'm a rookie, and a proud rookie, who started using it relatively recently compared to some people, and I fit the bill in terms of the responses we just seen on the survey actually.
Excellent, thank you. And Tom, how about in government, the public sector?
Thank you. I think really just mirroring what others have said. I see it used more for sort of non-economics tasks, I suppose, than economics tasks. And similarly with Cezary was saying, ultimately our results have to be explainable to the minister. So just popping it into the AI, you can't just do that. But people definitely do use it as a research assistant, checking their thinking. Might be, what are the mechanisms by which X supports growth or something like that? It sort of gets you started on things.
Thank you. And Edward, I'll pass to you, but any insights from your research on companies?
So what we do know is that many companies, especially larger ones, they definitely use AI to recruit, and this is before ChatGPT. They've been using it for many years now. But in the last couple of years, especially since COVID, a lot of the recruitment process has been automated. So employers regularly use CV screeners, AI CV screener to screen CV. But now in the last couple of years, they also started using automated interview platforms to basically interview a lot of applicants. So this is all brand new. So, we don't really know the impact of this and so forth, but this is kind of a new world we live in. So a lot of our, students in the final year, they apply for their fancy grad jobs, and they get sent directly to these kind of interviews. And I actually do research on this, and my latest research, for example, have shown that company using this kind of automated interview actually lose a lot of the applicants. So I think completion rate in our study, for example, only less than half of the applicants actually completed these kind of automated interviews compared to if we send them to a synchronous Zoom interview or more traditional methods. So there's a lot of reaction to this type of technology. We don't know what's happening yet. But on the other side, while we see these kind of automated interviews deter people, we also see how they evaluate people. So a lot of employers actually use AI to also evaluate these interviews. And what I've actually found in my study is that they are surprisingly good at evaluating. So we have multiple different kind of measures, but we also look at things like diversity and inclusion, for example. We find that, AI, despite, say, not given any information on things like gender and races, they tend to actually be a lot less biased than human when it comes to recruiting or evaluating people's interviews. They score women higher, they score ethnic minorities higher, but they only use text, so they don't look at face or anything, or voice or anything like that. So we see a bit of that, and they're also very predictive of people's employment outcomes in the future. So I also track these people using LinkedIn, over the years, and what AI basically score these people are very predictive of the future outcomes as well. Whereas with human evaluators, we didn't have that. So yeah, no worries.
So I think that's certainly a part of the world I'm not familiar with, having not applied for a job anytime recently. So, but obviously our students are facing it. So a lot of our discussion this morning around students was concern about them using it, and academic integrity. And I'm just wondering, and Tom, I might start with you on this one, is on average, do you think AI is making people better at their jobs, or in government, is there discussions about being concerned about people using AI?
It's a great question. I tend to say I think it's too early to say. I think in the short term, for now, it probably is making people better at their jobs because they can reduce the time that they take to do some of the more boring tasks. And there's been a number of different evaluations of within departments of using it. And I think the latest one I saw, looking at an evaluation of Copilot, and they found a small effect. I think it's like a half an hour a day. And interestingly, the biggest effects were with those who describe themselves as neurodivergent, and they found the biggest improvements. I think it certainly gives the potential for people to be better. Obviously, it depends whether they're motivated to use it for that or to take up the free time that they earn in other ways. I think the longer term concern is whether people lose those critical thinking capacities, because, and I've already sort of noticed this in myself, you can take the real lazy shortcut to do the thinking for you.
Excellent, thank you. And if you can pass the mic to Cezary. So you've already touched on things I guess maybe you're not allowed to do because of regulations, but are there areas where you think you'd like to be able to do it? And if the regulations changed, it might make people better at designing new products or new algorithms for trading, whatever it is you do.
So the regulatory framework is around the constructing the price, so creating the product. When it comes to the usage, or us effectively utilizing that to being more efficient and creating and working on a day-to-day, that's definitely allowable, and there is a very widespread usage. I just wanted to touch upon your initial question, whether it makes people better or worse at the job. It very much depends on the type of role that we're discussing, because if we are in a situation when we are dealing, for example, with communication with clients regarding, for example, why this happened that way and not another, for the 8th time, explaining the exact same thing from the scratch, it definitely, AI comes and is very helpful in communicating that. In general, I believe that what we're going to see, for example, in the next couple of years, that's sort of my own prediction, is that a lot of the communication departments are going to get much, much leaner at a lot of the corporations, just because this is the main usage of large language models. They have been trained on human language and communication. So that's what they're good at, and that's what where the strength is. When we're talking about roles when more kind of financial modeling or any kind of modeling or decision making is involved, AI does not make people better at the job, but it makes them faster. That's definitely a huge point, because when it comes to assessing the context or having some sort of critical thinking about the way that we want to approach the problem or that we want to solve something, the AI that just does not have the capacity to understand the higher complexity or the overall context that we're dealing with. But it provides us with a tool in which we can, as some of us already mentioned, conduct research, find appropriate information, and offload some of the tasks too. So overall, I think it does not make us better, because it is still within our hands and within our capabilities to provide value to the organization, but it definitely makes us faster, and I think that's what we're going to see in the next couple of years.
Thank you. Ramin, I'm going to put you on the spot, but did we ask people why they use it in the survey at all?
Why?
Yeah, so do they think it saves them time? Do they think it makes them better?
Yes, and how, in a way of how it helps them.
Yeah.
So again, a wide range of results on how it. So from error checking, something really specific, all the way to idea generation. So again, a wide variety of things. In the middle, you had so error checking all the way to idea generation. In the middle, you had encouraging me to learn. It's one of the things from very scratch. It helps you jump into a new field.
Touching also on the results from your research, what I particularly enjoyed from these graphs is that you had, the very low complexity to a very high abstraction, and I was totally expecting to see a downward sloping results, which was actually reflected in your results, which is, I think, what people are using that for.
Low complexity, you were expecting?
I was expecting a very high use for low complexity tasks such as debugging, coding, and all of that. But when it comes to understanding the context, devising ideas, this is where AI is less useful for.
Thank you. Ylva, can I ask you to kind of pick up on this general theme of whether it's helping people be better at work, but I know you have quite big interest in inclusivity and whether different types of people are affected in different way by changes like this. So I was wondering if you also think that it's helping some people more than others or holding some people back in any way?
I think firstly, obviously you have to bring women in because it's my favorite topic, and I hope some of you share that. And I'm thinking about women in finance and in financial services. I do a lot of research in women in leadership roles in finance, and quite often the financial services industry tends to overvalue quantitative skills above qualitative skills. But whereas the industry really needs more of the qualitative and collusive and collaborative skills. And one of the things that I think AI can certainly help with is to diversify our skills base. So in areas where we feel less secure about our skills, whether that's modeling, for example, then actually that could be a really nice assistance to help you with that, to overcome perhaps the confidence or self-efficacy. And then you can focus on what you're really good at. So I think from that point of view, it can save you time, but it can help to increase your self-efficacy in particularly quantitative phases, I think. And then on the flip side of that, those who are less good on the other side, in terms of language, sales, and writing, can get assistance in that area. So I think it can help us all to become a bit more upskilled.
Excellent, thank you. And Edwin, I was wondering, you mentioned earlier that if people know that AI is being used for their recruitment processes, it might put them off applying. Do you know if that's anyone, or if there's any individual characteristic that might be more dominantly avoiding those situations?
So I guess when employers they put people through these interviews, they ideally want only the good ones continue, and that way you get like a positive selection of applicants who complete these interviews. So then that will be doing its job. But we don't find any difference when it comes to skills and qualifications of those who completed or not complete these interviews. So they don't bring you better candidates. But one thing that we did find, for example, is that women are less likely to complete these kind of automated interviews. So we find that men are more likely to do these interviews, and there could be a multitude of reasons why that could be the case. But similarly, but on the other side, as I said, it's quite interesting because on the applicant side, women are less likely to apply. But when it comes to the evaluation side, what we find is the complete opposite, where AI tend to evaluate women much better than men. So I think it's certainly something that a lot of people weren't sure to know.
Yeah, maybe we need to tell the women to stick with it. Tom, how about in public sector? I know that you've obviously thinking about how to think about academic integrity in your recruitment processes, but generally, do you think there's things that hold some people back from using AI or are nervous about it?
I'll come on to that in just a second, but it's interesting. This is not directly AI related, but this year we separated out part of our recruitment process. So rather than the written assessment and the interview being done on the same day, they did the written assessment a week earlier. And the dropout rates, loads of people dropped out of that process for some reason. They didn't like doing it. It's kind of counterintuitive to me. Thought people might be more scared of doing the in-person bit. But anyway, what might hold people back? So we didn't do a survey, but we did talk to quite a lot of GS and the social researchers as well in government. A few different factors cited. One was around access and technology, although I don't think that's really a big issue. Most departments have their own kind of suite of AI tools now. There's definitely concern about sort of ethics and permission, so being able to explain how a decision was reached. There's also been a big demand for like knowledge. Well, what are the use cases here? Where my encouragement is people to play around with it and find out for yourself, and don't, it's not as useful being spoon-fed. These are a list of use cases, especially as we're such an early stage. So that's been really my encouragement for people, is to play around. And so our response, which is coming on to a bit like your training at the end, has been to try and set up forums, buddies, things that get people just to talk about how they're using it and share it and try it out themselves, rather than constructing a training program online, which only half the people turn up to.
Thank you. And maybe Pastor Cezary, any thoughts on if there's anything making people nervous about using it or not confident using AI at work?
Using AI in the context of making them more efficient?
Or generally, I guess the type of things that you've said people are using, is that everybody? Or do you think there's some people who are nervous about doing that?
I think there is a vast majority of the people working in the financial services are using that in one way or another. Obviously, it very much depends on the sort of corporate framework and whether there is some restrictions around that. A lot of the bigger corporations prefer to use some in-house built models for some privacy concerns, but for majority of the industry are utilizing the traditional ChatGPT, Cloda, Grok models, etc. So yeah, definitely there isn't a lot of concern regarding the use to make people more efficient. But yeah, I'm a staunch. I very much oppose kind of the sort of hope in the industry that at one point AI will totally replace the decision making of humans for the very simple reason. As I mentioned before, the bread and butter that we do at Finalto Trading is creating a price for all sorts of financial instruments, euro, dollar yen, gold price, etc. So there is two ways in which we can do that. One way is obviously having a refined algorithm that is very, very well researched, and we are effectively taking a stream of data, we're doing something to it, and at the end, we clearly know what the output price is going to be. Or we could potentially take the other route of having that lake of data, stream all of that data into a large language model, and every single millisecond asking the large language model, what do you reckon a fair price is made? Please don't make mistakes. So obviously, if we did the latter, we would definitely have a visit from FCA the following day, and 15 minutes later, I will be on my way home, probably drafting a CV for my next role. So yeah, from that standpoint, there is definitely some pushback to using large language models, and for very good reasons.
You might get the same questions we get from students, which is, what am I paying for if you're using AI to do all the work for you as well? Which is a good question from a client. Right, I'm going to pause. I have a couple of more questions to take questions from the room. You can see Tim's way ahead. So I will summarise Tim's question for the people online as well. Yeah. So just to summarise for the people online, the question is broadly, do we think students are using AI in a similar way to what Ramin's found in his survey? So some elements are there for labour saving and some elements are there to help them think through things. I'll pass it to you, Ramin, but anyone else want to chip in?
So I would like to know how students are using it. I was saying in the morning, maybe an anthropologist doing an ethnography, really following 3 students for the whole day and see what they do. We don't really have a clue, right? So whether they're using it. So I would like to know. But I know that when the industry is using AI at these 3 different levels, probably we should include it in our teaching at these 3 different levels, not just using AI as a programming tool, but also using AI for the literature review, going back and forth, right, with the AI. So we should incorporate that.
But just sorry, is it problematic that students might focus on the right-hand side of the scale for you?
I say yes. To again, let me go back to the skills that the employer had mentioned. One of it was know the limits of AI. Well, how do you know the limits of AI, right? Having the other skill of research skills and problem solving and critical thinking, right? So if you don't have those things and you jump into using AI, you end up with over-reliance. So that's the thing. So I would say on top of everything, I would still say research skill is the skill that allows you to know when to use AI and when not to use AI. Those are the invisible skills that we have, and we're not aware that we have these skills though.
Want to share any thoughts on this question, or what students may or may not be using it for, or even if you're looking for particular things from this graph?
So I suspect they're using it for everything, aren't they?
I mean, I'm sitting here thinking it's almost like we wouldn't use washing machines and wash everything by hand. We need to use AI. Students need to use it as AI, and we need to teach them how we'd like them to use AI, and we need to communicate with them about how they are using AI and how they can use it to help them. Because it's almost like we're silly if we're not using it, and so are they. And we are playing a bit catch up because, let's face it, they're younger than us and they're ahead of us in terms of technology use. But we're starting to educate ourselves, aren't we? We're starting to have courses that we attend in terms of using AI for writing dissertations. There's always that fear: have they generated the whole piece of work using AI? How can we know, etc.? But we need to accept that this is the development, this is the direction we're moving towards.
Excellent, thank you. I'm going to give myself a plug. So at the Developments in Economics Education Conference in September, I'm doing a session with student partners on how students are using AI that we've done a big study on. Other questions from the room? I know.
Will you share that with us, Cloda, so we can...
They're still having their focus groups and writing up. I'm going to go Peter down the back and then Antonio. Okay, I'm going to summarise all of this as my 4th question, which is what skills do we need to be developing in students? So Tom, I think I probably asked you this question 3 or 4 years ago. What skills do we need to be training our students for the world of work? And I think particularly that writing short things for the minister and doing the research quickly, those kind of things?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I don't have a definitive answer. But the traditional structure of our assessment has a sort of assessed on three elements. One is knowledge of economics, the second is application, and the third is communication. And it feels like those still remain very relevant. You've got to be able to explain the results that you're getting. Obviously, there's a load of skills about how to use this technology and how to use it safely. But being able to explain understanding the principles is really important. I also think that the communication part is going to get, although you can get help with that as well, it's going to become really important because it's just so easy to generate content that kind of dealing with this flood of content is going to be a massive task. So one is dealing with it. The other is how do you cut through in that torrent of information.
Thank you. And Edwin, the other question for you was, and I would add to that question, is it our job to tell them how to improve their CVs? But maybe the careers services, do you have a sense of whether the careers advice or the application advice we're giving students needs to change?
I mean, for example, at Exeter, our career service already have these practice automated interview platforms that students can have pretty much unlimited practice of these interviews. But when it comes to, what students should do with the CV, what students should do in these interviews, it is not 100% clear because, we are really at the beginning of this, right? And the AI, the algorithm, and everything is going to be constantly changing. So what might work today might not work in the future. So, even just a couple of years ago, people would insert keywords in white font so that, they can get past these CV screening algorithms. But, people, they will catch up. These software and so forth will catch up very, very quickly. So it is not quite possible to know exactly what happens, and we're economists as well. So it's also a matter about thinking about equilibrium in the long term, how this is going to unfold. If everyone uses CV screener, what's going to happen? If no one uses CV screener, what happens? Or, are there gains for employers to be made if they decide not to use AI? And there are companies that explicitly tell their applicants they do not use AI in the screening procedure to start giving them an edge and so forth. So, or perhaps, applicants, in terms of attracting applicants, they value employers that don't use AI. I do have, two Ts, for example, who told me, I got this automated interview from BlackRock, and therefore I'm not doing it, right? It's not uncommon to hear that, because it's a signal as well at the end of the day for employers. If you're using a human interviewer to interview someone, it takes a lot more time. It's a lot more effort. It means, the employer also values your time instead of just, sending 2,000 people, 3,000 people, through these automated interviews. So there's definitely a lot to think about. We're in the new regime, and things change absolutely all the time. But in the meanwhile, yes, I mean, people, I would say my current advice, which could be different, is try and aim for the average. That's what AI likes. So, for example, these automated interviews, how do they score them? They benchmark against 70 million other automated interviews of the same question, of what good answer is. So if you provide an absolutely exceptional answer that no one's ever heard of before, the AI might not be entirely kind to you. But perhaps that will change in the future. So once again, we don't know just
Thank
yet.
you. And Cezary, I'm going to summarise Peter's question for you. And for those who don't know, because he doesn't look like a young one that well, Cezary is quite a recent graduate, so you're probably closest to what it was like to be a student. Do you think you should have been taught how to debug and how to code with AI, or had more information about that?
So I have slightly unorthodox view when it comes to the the recruitment process in general, because my belief is that if the prevalent use of AI is generating problems for people recruiting for positions, that means that the recruitment process is flawed to begin with. I believe that, in many instances, for example, when the young graduates are applying for roles at investment banks or consultancy firms, they are trying to write these absolutely giant cover letters, which right now can be mass-produced by ChatGPT. So there is kind of a shift in how we should be evaluating students and what kind of core skills are we looking for in terms of teaching the young students to how to use AI. I think it will be very difficult to sort of catch up with the advancements of AI and to creating appropriate frameworks for that. What is extremely important, in my opinion, is what part of this research actually touched upon, is the knowing the limitations of AI for the very simple reason. I think not at university, very early on in the school years, we should be effectively bringing the AI into the educational process, but from the angle of making sure that the ownership of the process, the understanding of the problems lays with a person. That the people who are using AI are knowing the context. They are the main decision makers, and they are only using that to speed the process up, but not give the control to the machine, because very often the machine will just miss on a very important point, or sometimes totally hallucinate, which is something that happens quite often. So in my opinion, it should be it's something that should be dealt with from a very early age, because my sort of fear is that as we go on and as young people use more and more AI, this is something that, as you mentioned, offloads a lot of the cognitive load. We might risk people losing these skills of critical thinking, of understanding the context, of sort of digging a bit deeper behind what the output of the large language model gives us. So I think it is very important to educate people early on to use it in a correct way, rather than just having that as some sort of, I don't know, black box output.
Thank you. There was a question back here. Okay, I'm just going to rephrase that for the people online where we do our mic swap. So the questions there's the general point that large language models look for the next best text, and that's not always what we're looking for. But the question is whether the recruiters who are using AI tools are kind of being very generic about their use, or they're actually tailoring them to their job and what they're looking for, and updating to find these next best recruits.
So things like ChatGPT is kind of like relatively new in the landscape of recruitment technology. So a lot of these hiring software or these kind of algorithms have existed before ChatGPT, and they use a wide range of methods. A large language model could be one of them. So, for example, a more traditional recruitment software like one that rates CV, what they will do is that they will pass all the textual information on the CV, and then they will also analyze the job ad. So you give the model a detailed job ad, and then it will very cleverly generate a match score between your CV and that job ad. But it's very clever. So, if I'm recruiting for, say, a content writer, it knows immediately they're looking for someone with, say, humanities degree with this experience doing that and that. And what it does is basically a lot like what we do when we recruit people. So, job market screening, a few hundred CVs, we have a way that we screen people, right? Basically what these software does is to quite systematically do that for us in pretty much the exact same way we would. So in that sense, it could be good because, when I'm screening CVs, after 200 CVs, I'm going to, get tired and maybe make mistakes, whereas, these software will do the same without that. But in terms of how they do it, there's absolutely a wide range of methods they use. And then, of course, these days when it comes to hiring algorithms, there are also concerns about biases. So there's additional training that's needed to ensure fairness, across demographic groups and all that. So basically, there are also many different machine learning methods that they will use to try and stamp out any biases in the algorithm as well. So, but basically, a wide range is being used. I'm not very aware of very large recruiters using just a ChatGPT to look at applicants, but I can imagine these days for smaller firms, perhaps that's something that they can do. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Just because you were talking about bias in recruitment process and the assistance that AI can be with that, I see a great use for AI in marking And that, because you're making me think about, you writing through scripts and you're marking dissertations or you're marking exams. And actually, I think there we could have a great help from removing our bias by getting help from AI in marking.
Yeah.
Similar to the recruitment process.
Any kind of evaluation, be it the employers or us, there's something to be said.
Absolutely. And similarly, when you were talking about gender bias in recruitment, the AI is more clever looking for the skills rather than possibly judging who is behind those skills.
So we have a question from one of the online participants, Scott Simpkins, who is an associate professor at North Carolina State University. So he would like to slightly rephrase the question on student use of GenAI. So first, how can we in universities help students learn to use AI as a complement to thinking rather than a substitute to human thinking? So that's the first question. And his second question is, how do we need to change what we do at university to provide employment-ready graduates with both effective and ethical AI skills and disciplinary knowledge? Thank you.
Great, thank you, and good morning, Scott. Glad you could join us. I'm going to add into this question so we don't lose it the point I had sort of forewarned the panel about, which was, can we as educators learn anything about what you do in terms of training in your workforce? But so I don't expect you to have to redesign all our degree programs for us, but if you're already with new grads or very experienced people thinking about how to teach them, this knowing how to use AI well, what's ethical, do you have training courses, or is it all give it a go in Tom's world, or is there anything in between?
There are other things available. Most departments will be running courses which are, introduced to the department's models and how to use it safely and ethically, and I suppose that is kind of the foundational level. But as far as I know, I haven't seen any widespread sort of big courses about learning. But
and would you encourage us to be doing more in our degrees around using it well?
Yeah, I think probably just the discussion today has sort of helped me realise that it's that how to use them safe and ethically. You want them to come in with that.
Cezary, any thoughts?
Yeah, so the question is, do we, in our workplace provide any training for, the use of AI? And the simple answer is, well, no, we don't. There is none. However, if we think a little bit more closely about what AI is and how we use it every day, it is just a little bit more refined Google search. Because effectively what we're dealing with is a large amount of information, large amount of language, effectively shaped into the neural network that somehow remembers all of that information due to its sheer scale and sheer complexity, and is able to kind of output the information in a little bit more easy to use way, because if we Google stuff, we have to sort of use keywords, we have to go through the pages. ChatGPT offers us the luxury of just having the relatively simple answers straight away. So in the exact same way how we do not really teach students, or we do not teach people at school how to do Google search, or it's not something that we test in interviews, I think in similar way we cannot really teach people how to use AI and how to be efficient at prompting. What I think, and then we have in question, how do we evaluate people in general? Because as you say, there is an AI trying to evaluate people. We might fight back with AI trying to draft all the cover letters and all the CVs back, but the real question is, how do we actually evaluate people? So I think the general direction that we're going towards is using some sort of very concrete evidence, very concrete projects, an example of work that we've done in the past that are relevant and are working. So during my university times at UCL, I had the amazing experience of participating in quite a bit of very interesting projects that contributed a lot of weight to the final mark that I got in my degree. So I think that's the direction that will help us very much to shape that skills in students, because it doesn't really matter if we memorize the information or not. That's not what's going to be relevant in the coming years. What is going to be relevant is an efficient output and the product that is working. And this is something that is, trained by delivering projects that are somewhat impactful.
Great, thank you. And a nice addition to the discussion about going back or going forward, as Wendy was making me say, to in-person exams, but with the mixed assessments. Edwin, you want to add something?
Sure, yeah. So of course, when it comes to the ethics of AI, that is also a very complicated question, isn't it? Because we do not have an answer to ethics, right? There are lots of ethical dilemma where there are no simple answers, there are no right or wrong answers. But it's important that we can think about that. And there's still a lot of unanswered questions, which is why, it is important to encourage, especially economists, to think about that. We economists, are a little bit unique in that sense. We are taught to think about problems. We are taught to formulate problems, formulate the right question to ask. We model problems. And that's why, economists have been very successful in a world where we don't know what's going to happen, right? Like, if it is something that's happened, over and over and over again, consultancies can give you best practice, right? But in a world where we do not know what's going to happen, we have a structure to think about these problems. This has happened, for example, with Spectrum auctions, when they were auctioning, mobile phone spectrums, just network spectrums, we don't know how to do that, but economists figure ways how to do it, or managing, say, Airbnb marketplace. It's a completely new world at the time, but we economists, we are able to basically, the very best economists are able to, manage these sorts of things that are, not quite happening just yet. So it is very important to just remember that, like in economics, we learn a lot of these skills that we must not forget, and we must encourage people to basically, go forward and think more about these problems.
Thank you. Antonio, your question.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Pause for thought, everyone. So I'm just going to repeat Antonio's question and information for online. So the information was from studies that they've done. Students are using it for everything, and from Anthropic's education study finding that in particular they are using it for the higher order taxonomy rather than, we might be presuming they're using it to say, can you define marginal revenue for me? But actually they're using it to help them with the critical thinking and the other things. And the question, which I think is a very nice question to end on, is if we get to a world where there's no such thing as a non-calculator test anymore, and we know AI can do everything, what's the one skill that we need to make sure we're helping our students develop in the degree so that they can still get a job after this, assuming we're not just going to get paid to sit with AI? Edwin, go ahead.
Sure. I mean, in terms of skill we need, regardless of teaching, is I guess one important thing is our ability to connect with each other. Connecting with humans, the human connection is something that, very, very hard to replace. But otherwise, as I said, just kind of the ability to think, about problems, formulate problems. I think that is something that, at least for economics, is a comparative advantage we have. And if we lose that, basically, AI can pretty much do anything else. So formulating the problem, something that we learned very early on in microeconomics even, is something that I think is very, very important.
I would say that we need to teach our students to critically evaluate the information that they see, and stake their contribution. So it's very similar to a research project in a sense, because we get a lot of rubbish from the AI, and we can't take it at face value. You can't be sure of the sources, it hallucinates, as some people said earlier, but use that to your advantage and critically evaluate it and stake what are you making as your contribution. And I want to just add a very short anecdote. I did a piece of research where I analyzed gender bias in Hollywood movies like Wolf of Wall Street, and I used AI and I used visual analysis, so just as a person watching and analyzing the movies. And what AI didn't pick up on is the nuance. And then that nuance is very difficult to pick up on it unless you're watching and analyzing the script at the same time. So there's still a human element, and that comes in with a bit more emotional content.
Thank you. Cezary?
I would like to strongly echo what Ylva just said about the evaluation and the critical thinking. This is the absolute core skill that we need to ensure that all of the people entering the labor market have, just because right now we're in a situation where AI can produce some very nice output, very nice sounding text, but might be totally unrelated or totally unusable in any given context. So ability to judge whether the stuff that we're getting back is actually useful, is it actually relevant to what we're doing? Also touching upon the question that I got earlier about the debugging of the code and how do we make sure that people entering the workforce know what they're doing. If you want to debug a code, you need to have some initial idea of what the code is doing to begin with and what is the expected output, because first we need to identify that the bug is there and to begin with. And secondly, we need to understand whether the provided solution is actually fixing the bug or creating four more, as we go. The second thing, and which is, I think, the second pillar of the skills that are needed, is actually posing the right question, because the AI is absolutely useless if we cannot state the relevant question to the problem, because ultimately as humans we know what the context is, we know all the sort of ins and outs of the area that we're covering in our workplace. And if we cannot transfer this knowledge and the context into a proper language structure question that an AI can help us with, then this tool effectively becomes useless. So having the ability to evaluate the output, but at the same time making sure that we know what the right questions are for a given problem is extremely important.
Right, thanks. Last word to you, Tom, and then we will have a coffee break.
What a question. I find it incredibly difficult to answer. It's slightly scary as well. You kind of wonder what would be the purpose of a role such as mine in that world. Just to add to the very good answers already, I suppose one would be the skill of, integrity, to be, using this tool in an appropriate way and making sure it's giving, good, impartial advice to the ministers.
Thank you. I'm going to give Ramin actually the last word because he deserves it after all the work.
So, Antonio, going back to you, I would say teamwork. As long as the firms exist and we have to deliver through the firms, then I would say teamwork. And let me just finish with this, since you touched on singularity and sci-fi theme, in my view, let me finish with the metaphor that I used in my presentation. Star Trek. If you're a Star Trek geek, right, is the word of singularity. Probably, the machines are super intelligent, but still people have to work together, the teamwork, right? So that would be my answer.
We still need Dr. Spock or Dr. Kirk or whoever it is. Yeah. We will have a break. We will be having another discussion session, and from my side, it might be changing my perception on some of the things we talked about this morning, this session, and we will pick that up. Again, we'll be in groups. I just want to remind people that there's 3 groups in here and 2 groups in the coffee room, so that if we can spread out a bit more evenly so you're not so jam-packed in here. So some of you bring your bags when you're going for coffee and stay in the coffee room. And it's 2:45? Okay. Thank you, Ylva, for joining us.
Thank you.